I am Halli Casser-Jayne, and welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, where along with my partner in politics, former White House correspondent Matthew Cooper, we slice and dice all things politics, and some days Donald Trump too. This week on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, just how much is an American life worth? To Donald Trump and his fellow Republicans, clearly not as much as Trump's re-election and the Republicans' hold on power, evident as Trump moves to produce his grand reopening of the economy, despite the growing numbers of COVID-19 deaths and against the advice of his administration's own public health experts. And that's just where we begin this week. Get out the popcorn, because in our second half hour, I bring you a raw and titillating conversation with Lisa-Brennan-Jobs, the daughter of the late Steve Jobs. Her memoir, Small Fry, a New York Times bestseller, lauded by critics nationwide, and oh, such a compelling read. The podcast is posted at hallicasserjayne.com and is available on all your favorite apps. Let's get started. Here we go. Hello, Matthew. I missed you. I really did miss you.
Yes, I miss you. I hope you're good down there.
All things considered, we're okay here. It's a little wacky here. It's this is La La Land down here. It's too nice. So, it like colors what the reality of it is, I think.
Right.
And it's frightening in a way because we don't know. I don't know. I feel totally disconnected at this point. How do you feel?
Well, it's weird. It's ominous. It's, at the same time, kind of life goes on. The weather's nice here too, so that probably lifts the mood a bit. But, people are wearing masks on the street now, and certainly it's now required in grocery stores and elsewhere. So it's, it looks like, it's got a dystopian look out there, not to mention it's eerily quiet.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's so bizarre, if you ask me. It's just so bizarre. But I want to welcome you, not just back to the show. And happy Passover, by the way. I didn't get to tell you that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you. I want to welcome you back to a new America. Truly the banana republic of Trump. We are no longer the United States because why? The president's the only authority, Matt. He can close down Congress, both houses, whenever he wants. Or so he says. The daughter of El Jefe isn't required to follow the rules. She travels to her Dhaka, New Jersey for Passover, speaking of Passover. Americans can't really take their upset to their streets either, because if they go out and protest, they die from the coronavirus, said the president. Or El Jefe allowed to run rampant while he partied in the tropics this past February. I don't know, kiddo. I don't feel like this is my America anymore. I watch the news. I just don't.
Right. Well, it's an odd situation because he's not using a lot of the power he has, and he's claiming power he doesn't have. So, he could be using more executive authority to require businesses to make ventilators and to be procuring masks and to have the federal government take over getting a lot of these things instead of having the states bid against each other. So those are some of the powers he's not using. And then he's claiming total authority to decide when people go back to work and whatnot. So it's a bizarre situation.
What do you make of him? I will tell you that I was like playing cruise ship the other day. I was throwing my shoes at the TV. I can't watch it anymore. I find him so upsetting. Can you watch it? Do you watch it? Should any of us be watching this?
Well, I stopped watching it, and I've argued for a long time that there's no reason to take these things live for the networks. That their job is not to be an open mic, but to discern what's true and what's not. If people want to see it live, there are a lot of ways they can do it, C-SPAN and whatnot. But I don't think the cable news networks should take it live, or certainly not the broadcast networks. But that said, he's all over the map as per usual. Sometimes echoing the scientific authorities on this question, sometimes just making his own ramblings. I think in terms of policy, it's clear they were late to this, and that's cost lives. And again, he's really not doing the things that would be helpful here, which are, making the feds a really good single source for procuring medical equipment, and also making sure that these checks, really do get out there and they're continuing to be funded. The checks that have his name on it, yeah.
Which he says they don't have his name on it because he knew about it. They just somehow magically just stopped the presses.
Yes, they magically, yes.
Okay, yeah, right. The thing is, you wonder why he isn't using the powers that he does have, rather than asserting powers that he doesn't have. I have pondered this for weeks now. And it always takes me back to, now don't get mad at me for this, Russia. For God's sakes, he's even sending ventilators to Russia when we're still sending our ventilators. They're still trading from state to state on who needs what when. This is the part that confounds me. There's a mental brain thing going on with the guy. There's he's not able to reason his way through. It's become so nonsensical at this point, as if it wasn't before. But now that lives are on the line, I think, we have to take a completely different look at this picture, with a much more serious heart to it. Any thoughts on that as to his reasoning?
I think we've seen this before. He's all over the map. It's not a crisis. It's a hoax. It's a crisis. It's not so bad. It's terrible. He thinks in the moment, and it's just, this is not a good situation for him.
So his new thing is China, the scapegoat. There's a new conspiracy theory. This all came out of a Wuhan lab. Even if it did, by the way, so what? He knew it was here and he did nothing about it. So all of this is just smoke and mirrors. Typical Trump. But seriously, come on. What?
Yeah. Look, it's...
I know, it leaves you speechless, right?
It's pretty speechless. I will only say on the slightly... I wouldn't say good side, but mitigating, is that he's been willing to spend money, and not everyone in the Republican Party would have been at this point. I mean, if we had President Rand Paul or some other folks, there would have been no stimulus, and then we would be in a depression. Or if he had appointed a tight money gold bug to be head of the feds, they would not have unleashed so much money.
Well, brings up a point, though.
That's modest comfort at this point. But
except
at least he's doing some things to stave off a depression.
22 million unemployed as of this morning. We're getting to those depression levels, but that is true.
Yeah. But think of what it would be if if the Fed had just said, nah.
Well, let me give you a picture.
We're not going to do much.
Let me give you a picture. Back to Florida, D-U-H at the end, not A. If you could see the lines going down the streets for miles for these poor people trying to collect unemployment.
Right.
Because Rick Scott back in the day thought he'd be a clever little character and he would make it so tough that the numbers would show that Florida had no one employed.
Right.
And DeSantis, of course, did nothing about it. And here we are. I mean, it's devastating. It's devastating down here. People are not getting money. They are devastated. You see cars abandoned in the streets down here for lack of money for gas and running out of gas. It's pathetic. And none of it's being reported, by the way. None of it. But I want to go back to what you said about him willing to spend money. Republicans going along with this, which is these are not Republicans anymore. I mean, aren't all these people who were, for instance, in the House, the people who came in about the deficit and we had these people, they blew this a long time ago. I don't know what to call it, but it's not Republicans anymore. I don't know what we're going to call this group of individuals who are so screwed up. Let me bring up another one who screwed up. I'm going to move on. Kennedy, Dr. Kennedy, no teeth Kennedy, Senator Kennedy, has now put himself on the long, and he's a doctor, takes the Hippocratic Oath.
Well, he's an Oxford grad, too. I mean, this whole Cornpone Act of the Louisiana senator, it's really something.
So where they're dying in droves in Louisiana. And now he's saying we have to open up the economy because it's okay. We can choose death over the economy because we have to. This is a man who swore to uphold the Hippocratic Oath. Can you please explain? The guy from Texas, the guy from Indiana yesterday, Trey Hollingsworth. What the? Yeah, please help me with this.
Well, I don't understand. I mean, look, at some level, there's going to be, there's going to be some trade-off at some point of a willingness to, take some losses in order to get the economy open. I mean, they're not going to wait till it's absolutely perfectly 100% safe to open.
It doesn't have, no, it does. I get that. But let me ask you a question. Don't you think?
But yes, this whole idea like, hey, a couple million people, what are you going to do? Hey, these things happen.
I mean, talk about dystopian.
Yeah. It's pretty dystopian. And, look, you understand the impulse to want to get these things going, but it makes no sense economically to start up the economy and then have to go back to this.
So let me ask you a question. If you're told that everything's been lifted and you're free to rock and roll, have at it, are you going? Are you going to go out? I'm not going all the way till there's a vaccine or other medical treatment for it, because I think as long as I can still get it and get sick. Are you going to the library or, to do research?
Yeah. No, I'm not getting on the.
You getting on the tube?
I'm not getting on the New York subways for a while. No.
Okay. Well, so that's the thing. So I did a little study about that. I got on the phone and I called about 50 different people that I know, and I said, if this is lifted tomorrow, what are you going to do differently? And they said nothing. I didn't get one. Okay. I got nothing. And these are mostly Republicans, the people I know down here.
Yeah,
they are
I think
out.
It's by this point a well-known thing. You need a lot of testing and ideally vaccine, and then you can do something. I mean, look, there's a reason that South Korean economy didn't really shut down. They had a lot of testing.
They knew how to do it, right? They knew what they were doing.
They knew how to do it. If you don't have the testing, I mean, I assume it's going to be a long time before I can get a test.
Well, just before we went on air in New Jersey, both of our home states, they just uncovered, somebody called in and reported a senior citizen place where people were dead in droves.
Yes.
Do you see that?
Yes.
Yeah. And down here, and we're going to talk about him right now. I call him Ron DeSantis ass. What did I say a few weeks ago? He was acting like a normal person? Did I say that?
Well. Not normal. This man has made such a botch of things down here. Ron DeSantis, we're talking about the governor of the state of Florida. You don't think of World Wrestling as an essential activity? Oh, but you saw that. You saw what that was about. I mean, that was a deal. The second that was opened up, she gave like $1 zillion in PAC money, the whatever it was, to Trump. Well, look, I mean, you get this resistance from a fair number of Republican governors across the country. I mean, in Nebraska, they're planning on reopening a mall in a week or two. Yeah, and then there's another report this morning saying how many of these backwoods states are suddenly having peaks, reaching numbers again. Right. What are they thinking? Yeah, what are they thinking? Well, I think they're thinking their numbers are low, and and so people we got die. A lot of room out here. Yeah, and people die, and there's no subways, and we'll just. Yeah, and people are going to die, and their constituents aren't going to be there to vote for them, and then how are they going to? It's like this is the question, also, Matt. I know I'm frustrating you because I'm jumping in on you, but I had so much to say.
they open all of this up, and now the deaths spike by what? Let's say 10%. Let's say 15%. Let's say 1%. Who does that help? How are Republicans going to answer to that? Voters are going to go vote for the Republicans when they see that their loved ones have been killed because they listened to them and went along with them opening up the economy and people dying?
Well, I don't think they know. I mean, I think literally you don't, if you're in certain states, you're much less likely to know someone who's.
I guarantee you the first one to open it. Yeah. Ron DeSantis is going to open this state up. He'll be right on the Trump train.
Well, that'll be a big deal.
And when Bubby is gone, all those Republicans are going to vote for him? That's what I'm saying. I mean, there's some crazy thinking here.
Well, I don't think we know what's going to happen electorally to these Republicans or not.
Oh, I think we do.
You think they're all going to get swept from office?
Well, I'm going to say this. I mean, we're going to talk about the election in a second, but let me throw this out. Lindsey Graham was just outraised by Democrat Jamie Harrison, who's a virtual unknown in South Carolina, even though he had a high position in the Democratic Party, not a known figure. Same thing happened to Sarah Giddens, who's outraising Susan Collins. Not that that's such a hard thing to do these days, but still, she's the incumbent. All over the place, Democrats are outraising Republicans, and against long-term, Congress people. So I think there is a bit of a fever here. I mean, that's what I think. Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I'm not saying Republicans aren't vulnerable. I'm just saying we don't know yet, especially in some of these really red states, whether Republican governors are in danger. But we'll know soon enough. I mean, I think it's, look, we're just in uncharted waters. I mean, we're in a near depression, as you said.
And Major League Baseball. We can watch Major League Baseball. No people. That's important. We should open the economy, right? So that, these little things can be put together again, and we can all, because the president is tired of watching 20-year-old games. Oy.
Well, look, I mean, I just don't know where it's going.
You really don't?
Well, I don't know if I think thus far the deaths are lower than some of the estimates were. They're still obscenely high. What? I'm
going to give you for instance. First of all, there are no tests being done, so you don't know how many are dead, and you don't know how many are infected. So let's start with that.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's a reason for that. You asked me, or you said before, he's not using the powers that he could use. He could turn over these things to build, make tests. He could use that power for that. He's not doing it, Matt, because he doesn't want anybody to really know how bad it is. I mean, come on, this is Trump. This is how he rolls. Just 2 days ago in the Bronx, they brought in tests to see what was going on. Let me see I had the figures somewhere, because it was a ridiculous amount of people. I think 50%. Let me see if I can find this. They did a test in the Bronx, and most of the people, like 1 out of whatever, was infected.
Yeah. No, look, I'm not dismissing the scope of the pandemic. I'm just saying, we don't know the sum totals of what the
50%
deaths and casualties are going to be when this is over. That's sort of a fact we don't know, and this all stemmed from you're saying that this was political death for the Republicans, and it may well be. I'm just not certain of that.
50% of those tested positive in the Bronx. 50% of those who were tested were positive. So, you don't know who's walking around with it. And suddenly you open the system up, and what happens is all these people who have no,
Look, I mean, I'm not getting a disagreement from.
No, I know. I'm ranting. I'm ranting. I'm upset.
Yeah. I just don't want you to think I'm saying something I'm not.
No, I know.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I get you. Can we talk about Anthony Fauci for a minute and Dr. Birx? He wasn't there. Excuse me. He wasn't there yesterday, and there was no mention of him either. And we all had this little dust up where he felt like he had to go in and he had to justify what he said to the press. I don't know. I think he's on his way out. And I think Dr. Birx has turned into Trump twirl girl. And I trust, I'm not feeling trustworthy of any of these people who stand before us because, this man has Svengali-like powers, and everybody who at one point was honorable and independent just goes and plays his game. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't know about Fauci. I think it would be a big cost to the president to fire him. But, we've certainly seen with Mattis and others that he's more than willing to fire the adults in the room. We'll see if that's the case this time. I don't know. I mean, it's true she does in her tone sort of seem to, be placating Trump more than he is, but I don't know if in the end there's any daylight on the policies between.
Well, they're apparently not having any effect on him if he's going ahead, because they've made it very clear, and certainly Fauci has made it clear, that if you're going to open up the economy, you first better have testing in place and, mitigation in different ways.
Right. He's made that clear. I'm just not sensing that Birx really has any policy differences with Fauci.
I don't know who, what, when, where, why.
But I mean, you were describing her as a Trump supplicant.
Well, because I think you said it. You agreed with me that she does seem to be, I'll use the word kowtowing, if you will. You can use whatever words you want, but the independence that she began with in the very beginning of all of this seems to have long disappeared into the ozone, and she seemed to be placating him, not standing up with him. Wouldn't it be interesting? I'm waiting for the person, I don't know about you, but what fun it would. One person to go before the camera and break rank before the camera and say, "You are screwed up, Mr. President." I quit. I'm gone.
Well, yeah, there's a reason that doesn't happen.
Why is that?
I don't think you see it with really any president on camera, even during Watergate. No one just went to the podium and quit.
But why not?
You don't get to the podium unless you're on board. But look,
Well, I'd like to see Captain Bligh get his due. We have to move on. We have to go to the election 2020. Okay, here we are. Bernie seceded, if you will. And Mr. Biden is it. And we had the former President Obama come out. Oh, Biden, how do you like that? That's what we should be calling the next administration if they should get in.
Right.
And Obama came out and endorsed. And I think you have some things to say about the endorsement.
Well, I thought it was, effective. I thought from a number of standpoints, I mean, visually, it did not have that hostage video quality that so many videos do, and just sort of aesthetically the room and everything kind of worked. But, look, he made a rather explicit case to Bernie voters. Bernie was the only other candidate he mentioned. The whole rest of them, from Buttigieg to Harris to whoever, were not mentioned. And, he made the left liberal case that, I wouldn't have run the same way in 2008 that I would now. And we need the Bernie people, and Bernie's a great American original. And, it was a full-throated endorsement of Biden, but it was also a big welcome to the Bernie people, which I think is probably the smart thing to do. It's problematic if you can't get them in, and I think at this point, they're the only ones paying attention. I don't think it's really going to offend the vast majority of Americans by doing that. So I think it was a good endorsement. I think they got Sanders to really endorse instead of a semi-endorsement. So I think it was a good event for Biden. That's my take.
No, I agree with you totally. I would be very interested to see how much Obama is out there and how soon. he gets out there and, when he starts taking his punches at Trump, because I'm thinking he should be taking them now.
Well, he obviously, in terms of physically getting out there, he can't do that.
No, I understand that.
But anyone else can. But yeah, I mean, it does suggest that he's going to do it sooner than later. And there's always a question of Michelle getting out there, who's very popular, and
she's already working. She's working already. What on the voter?
Voter issues and such.
So,
well, look, I mean, I think this is all good for Biden. It's a very united Democratic Party, and that's
unusually so, right?
Unusually so. I think people are really, frightened by the prospect of a second Trump term, and I think that's going to motivate a lot of people. And we'll see. But as I think we saw with this accusation of sexual assault against Biden, that there's going to be a lot of attempts to tear him down, and we haven't even gotten back to Hunter Biden and everything. And the Republicans are, ask President Kerry or President Dukakis whether the Republicans are good at this. They're very good at tearing down Democratic nominees, unless they're nominees of exceptional ability.
Yeah, none of this resonates with Democrats. That's the interesting thing. And the Biden thing with the sexual harassment went nowhere so far. Hunter, there was a little bit of stuff that he didn't resign from the board that he said he was going to resign from. That went nowhere. It's interesting to me, and it's the thing is, it's not going anywhere with Democrats.
No, I agree. It's not going anywhere with Democrats. I'm not sure swift voting did either, but it's enough to fire up Republicans and get a few waivers in. So, I mean, I'm just saying this was a good set of endorsements for Biden, but, he's going to have to fight for this.
Yeah, but I think he's doing a good job. He was on Morning Joe this morning with Jill, and I think that's always, it's so soothing. He's just so soothing. Yeah. It's just really lovely. What were your thoughts on Rachel Maddow asked Elizabeth Warren last night, would she take the VP thing, and she didn't even hesitate. Yes.
Yeah. I can't say I was shocked by it. I mean, I think all these previous rivals of Biden would take it if offered, and I'd say the Warren stock is probably a little higher now that we're in the depression. I'm not sure if she'd be the strongest Veep in terms of getting them elected.
Oh God, I think she'd be all wrong for the job in every way.
I don't think it's a great fit, but I think you can tell that they're thinking seriously about how to continue to placate Bernie, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes left. In a fairly dramatic way.
Bernie? Biden. I was going to say. Well, I lost you for a second.
Yeah.
You can tack left. You govern in the middle. Then everybody loves you.
Well,
you do what you have to do to get elected. Isn't that the way
you do what you gotta? Do what you gotta do. So he eliminated men from consideration.
Right. That's something.
Which I think was. I understand why he did it. I'm not sure it was the best thing to do.
No, I thought it was a silly thing to do, because one of the reasons it was a silly thing to do is because you want to get those over 50 white men back from
and you just don't want to look like you're cowed, and circumstances change. I'm not saying he would make Fauci vice president, but he can't even think about that now. Because he locked himself in. So,
right. Yeah. But you know what? He got where he needed to get.
He got where he needed to get.
So he knew better than we know, because who would have thought, Who would have thought?
Right.
So,
I mean, in general, I just think this sort of like, I'm only going to think about so-and-so as, like, he's already said he wants a black woman on the Supreme Court for his first pick.
Well, that tells me that he may not be going for a white woman for VP, because I think the deal was that he made with Mr. South Carolina was that he would, put a black person on the ticket with him. And if he elects not to do that because that may not be the right person to bring him the state that he might need, i.e. if he were to go with someone like, for instance, Gretchen Whitmer or Amy Klobuchar, who, from the Midwest, okay, but you'll get your black person on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, maybe.
It's an interesting spin. We don't have much time left. I wanted to ask you about this. This protest yesterday against Gretchen Whitmer in Wisconsin, and I think there were a couple of others that they were ginned up. They were paid for by a PAC.
Sure.
Okay, I get that. I was laughing my head off because this is a protest against shutting people down, and keeping them home. Right. And when they put the whole trip out to please take your, they said stay in your cars, i.e. it's not safe to go in the street.
Right.
The irony of it, Matt, was so insane. I'm glad to hear that siren, because that was the other thing I wanted to tell you. You know what I do hear now in Florida, which you never hear? Sirens.
What?
It's like being in Germany. Yeah. Sirens all the time. All the time. Yeah. I never hear sirens because I'm kind of, in suburbia, but sirens. Right. Yeah. Sorry to digress.
Yeah.
But back to that protest crap. I mean, the irony of it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, look, there, on one hand, there are people who are going to say, to hell with it. I can't take it anymore being locked in, and I'll take my chances.
Well, those are stupid people. There's stupid people everywhere.
Yeah, this is something else. This was just sort of ginned up to make the governor seem like she was some the Wisconsin's a state they need. She's got a lot of PR going on with her. She gave the response to the State of the Union. She was on a forerunner of shutting things down and doing it harsh and succinctly. And she may very well be on his short list for VP. I mean, they went after her for a reason. Yeah. So, there is that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you think she's got a shot?
Sure. Why not?
I think she's young.
She's
too new.
She seems like a talented politician. She's, important state. Is he going to take somebody with so little statewide or national experience? I don't know. This is a guy who's puts a lot of faith in experience. He may want more than that, but I don't know. I think we've talked about different Veeps he could pick, and there's some names beyond the usual who could be interesting.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
But I don't think we know what the country's like in 6 months. I think if we're in a...
Oh, I don't think he's going to wait really 6 months.
No, he's got to wait next 3 or 4. But, are we in a full-blown depression? Does it look like we're coming out of it?
Yeah,
I know.
What didn't we get to that we needed to get to? Was there anything we didn't get to that we should have gotten to?
I think we got to most of it. I think just stay safe, don't go clubbing, Hallie.
No concerts,
no clubbing.
No clubbing, no.
I don't want you going to raves this week.
Oh,
I think you're just going to have your own dance parties.
You're going to have to peel me off the ceiling pretty soon. I'm about getting to the point where I'm like, oh my God. Now, mind you, I haven't been out in a couple of weeks. I'm scared to go out. I will tell you, I have asthma.
You're not taking walks or anything?
I go to my pool. That's my big thrill. Little walk here and there, but I'm not going. I will tell you, it's terrifying to me. It's terrifying. Down here, it's terrifying because so many people are just not adhering to it. So you don't know where they've been and what they're doing.
Right.
Don't even come knock on my door. My neighbors come knock at my door and I'm like,
stand back. Knocking's over.
We're done.
Handshakes and knocking.
No,
all over.
Stay away. And when somebody knocks at my door, I go out and I clean my door. It's like,
right.
You don't know where people's fingers have been lately. Anyway.
No.
Yeah, no.
All
so
right.
you
Well,
stay
be
safe,
safe,
my friend, and I'll speak to you next week, all right?
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, talk to you. Bye.
You are listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts weekly at hallicasserjayne.com and is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and on all your favorite apps. You can find the Halli Casser-Jayne Show on your Alexa device, too. Just say, The Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Oh, and come play with me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show. Her name is Lisa-Brennan-Jobs. Yes, that Jobs. Lisa's the daughter of the late founder of Apple, Steve Jobs. A blessing? A curse. It's never easy to be the child of a celebrity. The task made harder when your father refuses to admit you're his child, even when a DNA test proves so, and is a man loved by the world who himself isn't very loving. In her memoir, Small Fry, a New York Times bestseller, lauded by critics nationwide, takes us on her personal journey of self-discovery and of the man who gave her life, but in his death might have given her even more. Let's talk with Lisa-Brennan-Jobs. Hi, Lisa. It's Halli.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. I gotta say to you. Oh, well, yeah. Look, I'm gonna have trouble talking through this. I finished it last night at 2:00 in the morning, and I'm a wreck. I gotta tell you.
That I guess I was about to say that's not my fault, but then I thought, oh God, is that my fault?
It is your fault. It is your fault. I just want to say I shook my way all the way through Small Fry. It's raw emotion. It's honesty. I mean, what a journey yours, and what a ride you take the reader on. And I have to say thank you. But I'm also got to say, how dare you? How could you? You found the guts to dig so deep. I mean, what made you pick up the pen when you finally did? And how could you bear reliving all that? Tell us that first.
Well, thank you for reading it. I'm so grateful. I found that I couldn't. I'm trying to think of a metaphor that works. I couldn't scratch the itch unless I. Well, no, that's not going to sound good. I couldn't make the story work, and I couldn't make it feel better unless I wrote it in a profound way.
I get that. I totally get that.
So unless I could get to actual shame and actual emotion, and unless I could really figure out what things meant, meaning dig deep, make people actually human, then it wasn't going to work for me, and what was the point of writing it? I have always been writing, and I never wanted to be the kid of a celebrity writing a book. The idea made me cringe, and in fact was so mortifying for me that it took me a very long time to be able to commit to writing this book. But I think I wanted to escape from what felt like a kind of horrible burden of shame. And I don't think I'm unique in this, really. I think there's something about the human condition, especially as children, that we just take so much on and we try to make sense of so much we can't make sense of yet. And until I could relieve myself of that and really tell a story in a way that felt true, I couldn't move on. And, there's other things I want to write in my life. There's other things I want to do. And I felt as if I had to kind of get this out of the way.
A purging in a way?
But the only way out was through.
Exactly.
Unfortunately.
No, brilliantly said. And you experience that when you're reading it, along with you. I'm assuming everybody.
You also, the only way out for you was through. And
Exactly.
So you had to finish at 2 a.m.
Exactly. I related a lot to this story, by the way. But tell us about the beginning, because for those who don't know, your mom and dad, their relationship, the crux of this story is that, and then their relationship to you and who your dad was. Not everybody knows, but talk to me about that a little bit so that we can frame it as we go further. Don't take a lot of time, because I don't want to spend a lot of time on it.
So it's a coming-of-age story about a girl growing up in California with two parents who are young and very alive and charismatic. Her mother is Chrisanne Brennan, who's an artist, and her an artist with no money and 23, and her father is an entrepreneur who started Apple, Steve Jobs, and that's the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the book begins when my father is dying, and I'm walking around his house pilfering small objects, stealing little things, and not knowing why I'm doing it. And then it goes back to when I'm quite young, and my mother and I are actually going to my father's house to take a couch because he said we can take it, but then we arrive at his house and he's not there. So then we have to kind of steal it. My mother's climbing up the house to get the window open. So there is this kind of theme of theft and of being haunted and longing, I think, for my father and for a different situation that resounds throughout the book. But I think there is also kind of peace. And go on.
No, you.
No, I could blather on forever.
So can I.
I wrote it, so I have all the chapters in my brain.
What I wanted to say was both your parents are unique, and that's to say the least. But at its heart, Small Fry is a story about rejection by a father of a daughter and a bit of an overbearing mother. And I'm telling people, you guys, it's far more than this, but just to encapsulate it for you and how you come to find yourself in their enormous wake, both of them, such strong personalities. But I want to make a notation here. And I have many friends who lived what you did. I have, California friends whose parents were also famous. That's a lot to take on, by the way. But let's be clear. When your parent is famous, there's your parent, Lisa, and then there is the parent everyone else knows. And for you, that is that parent too. Tough to reconcile?
I don't know if it's tough to reconcile, but it's definitely a tough thing to share your parent. I think that I wrote about that in the book a little bit, how people would come up to me at the memorial service and say, "Oh, your father was like a father to me." And I think it kind of captured the feeling the culture has in some ways about my father, that he was theirs too. And you know what? He might have been. But as a daughter, it is especially difficult to deal with if you don't know exactly who he was to you. And if perhaps you felt as if at points he wasn't able to be a father to you, and so he's more for them than for you. And I think there must have been some need for writing the book, not necessarily to claim him as my own, although probably that was some of it, but also just to understand, in fact, who he was to me, so that it wasn't other people telling me who he was to me. I had told myself so completely that it feels less perilous to be told by others who he was to them. I mean, I think everyone takes a different part of this story for themselves, I've noticed. I think that must be true with memoir, and especially with memoir that's so particular. And people say what the different things mean to them. I think some people have been particularly moved by my relationship with my mother. I don't know if I would categorize her as overbearing, but I think that one of the things you learn when you write a book, very much like having a famous father in a certain way, is once it's out in the world, it's not your own anymore.
Right.
It is what other people feel it is. So that felt important to me to fully understand who I was and as much as I could to understand my history so that I had made sense of it enough that it wasn't as threatening when it was perceived or interpreted by others.
You can understand that, though, because I think what happens is that we all read into it what we need to read into it, by the way, to help us go through the process of our own shtick, and getting to the truth of our own.
Well, I think that's also what books are for, aren't they?
That's exactly it.
To help us make sense of our life and also to make us feel less lonely in our loneliness.
Absolutely.
Not to eradicate the loneliness, but to give us company there.
It's universal. That's the point. It's also universal.
Right.
So listen, this part is key to the story, but for so long your father refused to admit you were his daughter, even with a DNA test. And then there's that computer that he actually named. I mean, there's a lot of push-pull throughout the theme of this story. So this man, this father of yours, it's a weird thing about life. We can't hate our parents, can we? No matter how awful they are. We can't hate them. Can you talk to us? Does that something you can relate to?
Maybe there's something dishonest about hating our parents in a certain way. I mean, I guess people do, but then it takes so much emotion to hate them that you might as well do something else.
Yeah, I don't even think we're capable of hating.
And it can lead to bitterness.
Yes.
Which is another sort of false emotion in the sense of it takes a lot of energy. It doesn't give much.
Yeah.
I found it was more useful to find meaning from things, to understand my parents better. For example, my father and I one day were driving together to go stay at his house on Wednesday night. My mother had school. And we're driving in his Porsche, and we're going to his mansion, and we are alone together for the first time. And in a certain way, this is the dream. This is the dream of the fatherless child, that her father would come in and be so extraordinary, so charismatic, and yet he can't seem to talk. And I remember at the time feeling somehow badly that I wasn't interesting enough for him to talk to. And only later, when I looked back and wrote the story, I realized, oh, this is an extremely young man, and he simply doesn't know what to say to this girl who he's just met. And so I think there is, whatever someone has done, you can find compassion for it, usually if you understand it thoroughly enough. And I think the process of going back and understanding stories like that opened up space in me to do other things, to think other thoughts, because I wasn't so fixated on something that wasn't even true.
You talk about shame, which is, I think it's a man-made emotion personally. I don't think it's not a feeling. It's, that we don't put on ourselves. But and so much of this book touched me. I keep going back to that. One thing that got to me, that in your father's looming presence, you say you start to disappear. And I have to ask you this. Do you think that was solely your experience? Do you think everybody around him had that effect, that that's who he was? He was so all, unique. And could you find comfort?
Well, there was sometimes that I was so frightfully embodied near him. I felt fully seen. And that was part of his charisma and his gift, was that he could also see someone completely. And so it was so frustrating, in fact, when that sight would disappear, because it was so satisfying, and it felt so satisfying for both of us to see each other and enjoy each other's companies. And then where did it go? Why doesn't it come back? It felt as if, wouldn't he want it to be there all the time? But I think that other times it's true, and I found this to be a kind of theme in the book, this quality of feeling as if I was disappearing. And I think part of the book was an attempt to become embodied again and to reclaim those moments of disappearance. And I don't know if it was other people's experience. I imagine not. I imagine so. I have no idea. But for me, it was important to go back and find those places where my limbs started to disappear when I was young, and I had words, but they had disappeared. And to go back, and the way a writer can recreate experience, to go back and find that even if at the time I couldn't speak or I couldn't feel, that now I can write and I can feel.
What about
your mom? The way
to
go and find the history again.
What about your mom? What was her experience with him? Did she feel like what you felt?
No, I think she didn't feel the way that I felt because she wasn't his child. I think that they were more equals. They had been to high school together. They'd sort of grown up together and shaped each other's value system. And I think even if she didn't always get him to do what she wanted, she had a certain power with him, because even if they didn't often get along or speak, they had respect for each other. And I think he respected the way that she was parenting me and told her so later. And they were often sort of dancing around each other and then would connect infrequently but meaningfully around me. It was an odd relationship, right? I mean, they were so young.
Right. You were conceived so young. I want to go back to the fact that you were conceived so young, and I don't know if you answered the fact that he denied that you were his child for so long. I couldn't grasp that, Lisa. Couldn't get that. Could you? Where did you land on that?
I couldn't quite get it either. I'm not sure why, and I think different people can draw their own conclusions or confusions from it, because I also don't know what it means. My intention in the book was not only to feel the feelings myself, but to let other people. Like, it was once I had worked out the story, it was like, now you get to live inside it, which means you get to live inside some of the confusions. I don't know why my father. I think he was young and he didn't want a kid, and it didn't really work, and it didn't really fit in his life, and so he disavowed it. He had also been adopted, and there may have been
that's a great
some sort of echo of that experience.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah. Did you like him at the end? Did you learn to like him?
I think we did like each other. That wasn't the problem.
No, I didn't say like.
We found each other.
Yeah, I didn't mean it that way. Oh. As a human being, did you like him?
At the end of writing the book?
Well, in general, yeah. You take it. I'm not going to.
I think that at the end of writing the book, there was definitely a feeling of understanding him, my father, and my mother in a way that made them human. And there's something about people that are human and fully embodied, like fully explored, that they are somehow likable, because I felt empathy. I felt compassion. So there's certain places where my father was extremely unlikable, and the mystery of his unkindnesses still haunts me. And yet the moments that were good were truly joyful. And I felt truly seen. And so part of the challenge is just to be able to hold those two facts and those two truths at the same time.
It's always so far more complex than we think it is. Isn't that true? You cannot compartmentalize it. I think that's one of the joys that you took me on, because I saw you going through the different incarnations in your brain, as to where you were on all of this throughout the book. And
you mean as I'm young, I'm talking about the perspective from being young as well.
You go exactly, and then as you grow, and then that's the journey. That's what we all hope for in life, that we're going to be able to look back as the kid and get to the adult. Yeah, I just lost my mom. So, and it's very raw.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. But it's raw, and you try and figure all of it out. And it's not a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plane. It's on 1 minute I'm on this plane, and the next minute I'm on that one. So, and you were so honest.
No, and grief is not linear either.
No, none of this is linear.
It bounces around.
Exactly.
I would get extremely hungry and extremely tired, and it just felt like it took forever. But one of the joys of writing a memoir is you get to go and hold the hand of your child self and interrogate what she was thinking at a particular time and feel your way in there without the perilousness of getting stuck. Because when you're a child, you don't know where it ends. You don't know where the story ends, and you don't have enough perspective to understand many of the things that you're experiencing. There was a time I was talking about in the book where I'm in the car with my mother, and she's screaming, not at me, but just at the world. It's raining, and we're lost, and we have nothing, and she is at her wit's end, young, single mom, poor, and something else has gone badly. And narrating that scene, I remember very distinctly at the time feeling the existence of this being in the back of the car sort of watching over me, someone who couldn't interfere, but a kind presence that was there for me. And I thought it was so perfect because going back and writing this book, I got to be that person for myself, essentially.
Right.
I got to go back and be in these sometimes tricky times, difficult memories, other times really joyful memories. And I got to keep myself company even if I couldn't change the story or the moment.
Two things that I want to bring up real quickly. One is something your mother said, because she was an artist. She was a brilliant woman, is a brilliant woman. She's really fascinating. Don't draw the tree you think you can see. Draw the tree. Trust in your tree, she told her students. I think that's a line we all need to carry with us. It really gives you
But I think it's true also with drawing. You have all these preconceptions about the light and the shadow, and if you actually just see, it comes out differently on the paper. It's so difficult, though.
It is difficult, but it's also a metaphor for how we look at our lives. Something you're
like, Lisa, it's a metaphor. I know.
No, it's true. But kiddo, there's this too. There's your 20-year junior stepsister says to you that you are a mistake. You were a mistake. I will never forget that.
Well, she said you were Daddy's mistake. I think that it just sort of came out of her mouth at a party. She was very young, so we have to keep in mind.
Well, I'm not blaming her. I'm not blaming her because there's no blame.
And also, let's be honest, it was the truth.
Well, was it?
She was wise beyond her years.
I don't know about that. So, in the processing of all of this, this is a very tough, it's very loving book. Is it forgiving? Is there a need to forgive our parents, ourselves, or is that just ridiculous?
I think more than our parents, there's a need to forgive ourselves, and to interrogate our childhoods more closely, more delicately, more tenderly. Sounds kind of creepy, but I don't mean it that way. I just mean looking back is important because you don't want to repeat your own childhood with your children, and also you want to free up the space for the future. At least that's how it was for me.
Right. Interesting, and I want to make this point, and that is, your parents gave you a great deal, good, bad, or indifferent, right? I think at the end, if you're smart and you've learned the lessons, and the gift that they've given you is that you're able to assess this, and that you're going to save yourself. They can't save you. Life's chore, if you will, is to save.
My mom says no one survives childhood; they just grow up.
Well, there you go. I don't know if you want to say anything.
It's definitely not a memoir of suffering. I think it's a coming of age story, and there was so much joy in it. I think that was another reason I wanted to write it. It had gone by so quickly, and there were such flashes. such wonderful experiences like playing hooky with my father that I thought would happen again and again, and they only happened once and then it was over. And to go back and get to go through it one more time before I let it go. And to get the blessings before I had to let it go.
Right. Well, I think you got that. Yeah. Your father's gone, your parents, your parent, by the way, yourself. Now, is your dad still in your head, or does he
totally sleep deprived?
I hear that. Does he live in your heart? Where's Dad now?
Oh yeah, completely. And I think he would have been so happy to know his grandson. So that's too bad.
Really?
That's too bad.
Lisa, small fry is great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. I've been speaking with Lisa-Brennan-Jobs. Her memoir, a must-read, is Small Fry, available at Amazon.com. Thank you for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a production of Resec LLC. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is available at hallicasserjayne.com and on all your favorite apps. Be sure to visit us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and follow me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show. Until next time, this is Halli Casser-Jayne.